Allison.
Hey, Jasmine.
And hey, all of you. My name is Jasmine Bowles, and I am the proud executive state director here at 9 to 5 Georgia. And I am joined by one of my brilliant colleagues, Miss Allison Glass, 9 to 5 Georgia's policy manager. You want to say hi quickly, Allison?
Yes, hello, everyone. So excited to be with you today to have this conversation with you, Jasmine, about what it has been going on during legislative session.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation. Before we dive in, I want to tell y'all a little bit more about 9 to 5 and 9 to 5 Georgia. So, 9 to 5 Georgia is actually the state chapter for the National Association of Working Women. So, we are a nonprofit that's about 50 years old, and we fight for economic security and economic justice for women across all lines of difference, particularly Black and brown low income women. So here in Georgia, we're actually really proud of our statewide presence. And so that includes a hub in Metro Atlanta. We've got folks in Savannah. We've got teams in Albany, Macon, and scattered throughout. So we've got members and fellows everywhere. Our main priority here at 9 to 5 Georgia is to protect, serve, and support the well woman. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about what is a well woman? What does she need? What protections need to be in place so that she is able to thrive across her entire lifespan. So we fight for housing, we fight for healthcare, we fight for environmental justice, paid leave, workplace protections. I mean, the list goes on and on. Anything to make our people whole and well. Um, so, as Allison mentioned, we monitor things along the well woman pipeline throughout legislative session. And we want to talk to y'all about crossover day. Legislative session's about 40 non consecutive days, and right around the middle, the bills switch chambers. So, we want to tell you a little bit more about what that means and what you can expect coming out of Georgia's most recent crossover day. And Allison, you ready to help me out with that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Sweet.
So yes, crossover day was just this past Thursday, um, February 29th. And it's a big day during legislative session because, as you mentioned, Jasmine, it is the day that a bill has to have passed either chamber, either the House or the Senate, for the bill to keep moving throughout the rest of legislative session in order to have a chance to become a law. So it's a really big day. It's a time for us to kind of reset and look at our legislative priorities and see what has crossed over, what we can continue advocating for, or we need to continue advocating against, and what didn't cross over and what we have to continue doing year round because we know that this work doesn't stop.
It sure doesn't. And, we're here highlighting crossover day, but what that also helps me understand is we kind of have 3.5 more weeks to go. So, what we learned today is by no means the end of the legislative session story for 2024. So, we've got to pay attention and stay engaged. And I think we can start by talking about some of the bills that we're watching that affect our primary base of working women of color. I think, one of the key things that we fight for here at 9 to 5 that a well woman needs is time off from work to be either a mom, a wife, a daughter, a community member, and to take care of herself. Women need to take time off and be paid for it. But that is not a right that all Georgians have. So, I know recently we've been really proud to remove the sunset provision and expand an opportunity for state employees in Georgia to have 3 weeks of paid leave. But even when it was happening, we were excited, but we knew that wasn't enough. Can you tell me the latest updates in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So a bill was introduced this session, HB 1010, that would expand that number of weeks from 3 to 6. So again, this bill is applicable for paid parental leave, which means the birth of a child or welcoming a child through adoption or foster care. So it's eligible for state employees and public school employees. So yeah, we're really excited that this bill was introduced, that it has crossed over, that we get to continue advocating for its passage, while we also keep that larger vision um, of extensive paid sick days, of comprehensive medical leave, and for family caregiving as we look at paid leave comprehensively. But yes, we're going to continue pushing for this bill. Really, really excited that this overall momentum for paid leave continues to increase here in Georgia.
That's critical. Big deal, big deal. So we are going to continue watching HB 1010. When I think about the wellness of a woman and her children and family, a lot of that, if not all of it, starts at home. But here in Georgia, not only are rents skyrocketing and is there pervasive housing injustice, um, but our state still does not have any renters protection laws. And so one of the things on our radar is HB 404. HB 404 would be Georgia's very first renters protection law. And what that could do is make sure that landlords are doing right by their tenants. High quality, affordable housing with, livable conditions. And unfortunately, I hate that we have to codify into law that housing should be livable and fit for a human, but here we are. So, we want to see that get across the finish line, and also see renters have rights in the face of, if in the event they're facing eviction as well.
Yes, absolutely. Super excited that we get to continue advocating for that as well. As you already mentioned, Jasmine, another component of a well woman is to be paid fairly. And there is a bill, HB 1125, that crossed over that would end the current practice and law that allows people with disabilities to be paid sub minimum wages. So it is pretty unbelievable this practice is still in existence in Georgia. And so we're really hoping that this bill will continue on so that disabled workers are able to get the fair pay that they deserve as well.
I mean, I'd love for you to unpack that for me a little bit because last I checked, Georgia had some of the worst minimum wages in the country. So if we have an incredibly low minimum wage, are you telling me that there are people in our state who are paid below minimum wage?
Unfortunately, yeah, that's exactly what this means. So yes, federally, the minimum wage is 7.25, which is absolutely horrific.
Mhm.
Here in Georgia, the state minimum wage is actually $5.15. Now, most people get paid that 7.25 because there is that federal law, but people who are temporary workers, migrant workers, some domestic workers are still getting paid that $5.15. And then, so this, looking at this law, disabled workers could actually even get paid even less than that $5.15 because they were not included in that original minimum wage law for Georgia. So yeah, it's unreal. We've got to continue on all the fronts of ensuring that workers are paid thriving wages, right? Living wages. So this is like another step in that direction.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, we will continue advocating for that, but what's a legislative session without some disappointments, right? So we know that we have so much to fight for, and we have to celebrate the small wins, even if they seem incremental. That's tough work in our organizing and advocacy and policy space, but celebrating our wins are critical. We cannot ignore, though, some of the grave injustices that we see continuing, and I think it's important we highlight some of those. So, it's not fun, but I'll kick us off with a bill that we're concerned about. Um, Senate Bill 362, SB 362 is is on my radar, Allison, because, in so many words, this is a union busting bill. This is a bill that is anti-union here in Georgia in such a way that it would penalize businesses for recognizing their union. And it penalizes them by like removing maybe some of the federal money that they can receive. And ultimately, this hurts workers. This prevents workers from organizing when they face injustices at work. And that, I feel like it's federally illegal that the state is doing that. What are your thoughts on Senate Bill 362?
Yeah, exactly. It is federally illegal. And so, in a state like Georgia, which is already a right to work state, which really means that it is workers do not have many rights in our state. Passing this type of legislation is only going to make that situation that much worse for workers. It also infringes on the rights of business owners by trying to tell them how they should recognize unions or not to receive that state funding. So, yes, we are like, we don't want this law. Also, it is federally illegal. So it's just going to end up in the courts, costing the state even more money when we really need to be having the state use that money to support workers more, where they know that they're very concerned with the workforce. So this is something that is very contrary, actually, to supporting workers. Definitely very concerning and something that we're going to continue joining with organizations across the state who are fighting against this bill.
Yeah.
Another bill that we're going to keep fighting against is SB 180, which is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Folks refer to it as RFRA, and it really is a license to discriminate. This bill would enable discrimination against people of faith, against LGBTQ people, women, and other folks. These types of laws have passed in other states, and we know that they've already been used to deny things such as contraception, HIV treatment, and it allows businesses to discriminate against people that they don't want to serve. So, in a state like Georgia that doesn't have a comprehensive non discrimination law to protect all classes, right? So, that would mean race, age, nation of origin, and religion. This law that just carves out this protection of just around religion would be actually even more dangerous to us.
That's really ironic. Um, because here's Georgia saying we want to protect people, working people along religious lines. But at the same time, Georgia is one of few states without any workplace protection laws for their workers at all.
Right.
And here at 9 to 5, we've been fighting for, workplace discrimination, workplace harassment protection laws. We even had one that we were watching and fighting for this session that
Right.
did not make it out of committee. And it didn't make it out of committee because apparently Georgia says, "Hey, we don't want to think about protections." But then they go and do what you just said, which is like, a religious protection bill. So that's really frustrating. And clearly this is going to be long-term work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We mentioned childcare as a priority for well women. And we know that here in Georgia, our Child Care Assistance Program, or CAPS as it's affectionately known as, is a deeply underfunded program. This program subsidizes childcare for too few Georgians, and it's the Georgians who need it most. So we're still fighting for um, a, about a $20 million addition to the CAPS funding program, which still isn't enough, Allison, let's face it, but it would at least offset the cost of childcare for more families, which is critical right now. I'm hearing neighbors, families, friends talk about how their childcare almost costs them the same as their mortgage, and that is unsustainable. So, I really want to see a reform in our childcare space, starting with a $20 million deeper investment in our CAPS program.
Absolutely, absolutely. And CAPS also, so it supports more families getting assistance, but it also supports our childcare providers
That's right.
who are offering one of the most important supports for our babies and our small children so that the rest of us parents can go off to work. So it also relates to the amount of reimbursement that providers get. And as folks know, there is a huge issue right now with childcare providers not being able to make ends meet and keep their businesses open. So it's like families are paying way too much, but childcare providers are also not getting the supports that they need. So CAPS, expanding the CAPS program would solve both of those issues. Um, Super important.
Great point.
And it's really about, these budget questions. Like we know that our state has the money, right? Everyone keeps talking about this $6 billion amount of unspent funds that are available for our state. So, that $20 million might sound like a lot, but when we compare it to this $6 billion surplus that our state has, we can absolutely afford this. It's just about our state's priorities.
Great point, Allison.
Yeah, thanks. So another thing that we definitely have to keep pushing for is healthcare for all people in our state. Georgia is one of 10 states that has not yet expanded Medicaid. So Medicaid expansion would allow 500,000 Georgians who are uninsured, who are workers, who might be low income parents, women, veterans, other adults to enroll in health coverage. So a bill was introduced this session. It is continuing forward that would create a study committee on expansion options for Georgia. But we already have all of the data. We have all of the models of how other peer states have already closed the coverage gap. And so we are really looking to our lawmakers to take action this legislative session because our families and our communities cannot wait longer. They have been waiting long enough. So we are hoping that some legislation will continue to move this legislative session to address this healthcare crisis.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, well, women need housing, healthcare, equity in pay at work, workplace protections, and we have so much more to continue to fight for. And there's so much that didn't cross over that we still care about, in addition to all the things that we are continuing to advocate for. So, we've really got to keep our eye on all things environmental justice. That includes utilities justice here in our state. We have got to close this gender pay gap. And then this reinvestment in the most marginalized of us, that includes not only increasing subsidies through CAPS program, but also TANF and other programs for low-income families. So, the work will continue. And I'm excited to be alongside you in that work, Allison.
Same, Jasmine, absolutely. And along with all of our members across the state. As you said, we have until March 29th to keep pushing this legislative session. Please do, folks, check out a few calls to action, things that you can do right now to contact your legislators, to ask them to support several bills that we are prioritizing that are still moving, and also to voice your opposition to bills that you don't want to continue moving and become a law. So we really hope that folks will continue engaging throughout this legislative session. Make those phone calls, send in those emails. We send out lots of calls to action, and we'll continue for these next couple of weeks. And so we really invite you all to continue making your voice heard around these really important issues this legislative session and beyond, because as you said, the work does not stop when legislative session ends.
What a great wrap up, Allison. Um, To all of you watching, I just want to say thank you. On behalf of Allison, myself, and the entire team at 9 to 5 Georgia, we appreciate you for tuning in today and hope you'll stay engaged with 9 to 5 Georgia throughout session and throughout the year, where we continue fighting for everything that a well woman needs and deserves. With that, we'll see you next time.
See you soon.